Your Honor, the jury's present and accounted for.
Thank you. Please be seated. Back on the record, State versus Bundy, State versus Schmidt. Jury's present and accounted for. The attorneys are present. The parties are present. Defense may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Ammon Bundy.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give now before this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Will you state your full name for the record?
Ammon Edward Bundy.
Mr. Bundy, what do you do for a living?
I own some commercial properties. I have 365 fruit trees and just various other things. My profession actually was, I grew up on a ranch and been involved in that world or industry quite a bit, but actually left the ranch when I was young and started a fleet maintenance business where I take care of commercial trucks, fleets, and would manage and maintain significant large fleets for different companies.
Mr. Bundy, is your testimony today being coached?
No, I asked you not to.
Why?
Because I wanted to make sure that the jury heard it the first time from my mouth.
You afraid of the truth?
No, not at all. That's why I'm sitting here.
You want to hide the ball in this case at all?
Not at all.
Ammon, you were in the Statehouse in August of 2020, right?
Yes.
On August 25th, you refused to get out of the chair. Why did you refuse?
Well, I didn't say anything. I just sat there. I didn't stand up or anything. But to answer your question, I felt like I had a right to be there. I felt like it was my right to be there. I felt like what was happening and what had happened in the Capitol building during that session, when it come to, blocking the people, the way they were treating the people, the way they were treating those who were trying to get information out to the people. I felt it was, to say it kindly, very uncalled for, that it was very disrespectful for people who were trying to participate in the legislative process. And it was very concerning to me. And so I felt, that I would demonstrate that I would show in a peaceful manner that I was not okay with what was going on.
Do you feel like the right to be there, your right to be there in that chair, do you feel like that was exclusive to Ammon Bundy?
No, not at all. That's the whole point, that everybody had a right to be there. Everybody has a right to participate. And that's what the Capitol building is for. It's there to debate. It's there to make, decisions. But sometimes that decision process, making that decision is a sticky, and sometimes it even gets a little ugly. But if we don't have that debate there, are we going to have it in some other way that's not peaceful? And if you start suppressing and chilling people from going there and participating in it, in that building, in that process, then what have you just created? You created a bunch of frustrated people that want to try to work out their problems in the street. And so that's why it's so important that people can go in there, that they can go in there freely, that they're not intimidated, and that, you know, they're allowed to do the things that they need to do, even if it's not perfect. But they're allowed to do that and not be arrested, you know, not have their rights suppressed.
You feel like that even someone you disagree with, that you would stand up for their right to disagree?
I've done it many times.
Tell me about that.
Well,
Objection relevance?
Role, I think it might have to do with this state of mind at the time, so I'm going to get into some of this. Go ahead.
I spent 2 years in federal prison doing that very
Objection,
same
this
thing.
violates the court's pretrial ruling.
Juries disregard that comment.
Mr. Bundy, I'm going to hand you a envelope marked as Exhibit I.
Your Honor, quick motion to strike for the last.
I did grant that motion, and I instructed the jury to disregard.
Thank you.
Sorry, Counsel, what's the marking?
Exhibit I. Ammon, do you recognize the envelope that's been marked as Exhibit I?
Yes,
What is it?
it's a jump drive of my arrest.
Do you recognize that?
Yes,
Have you seen it before?
Yeah.
You believe that it contains a true and accurate copy of a video of your arrest?
yes.
Your Honor, I move to introduce Exhibit I.
The objection to I.
Question in aid of objection. Mr. Bundy, have you viewed Exhibit I in full?
Yes,
Okay. And has it been altered or changed in any way? I guess spliced specifically.
not to my knowledge.
No objection.
Mr. Schmidt, any objection to defendant's I? Defendant's I is admitted. Request to publish, I assume, granted.
Yes, Your Honor, and may I have a moment to facilitate the publishing of aforementioned exhibit?
Yeah. You got it back, all right.
The dongle, the adapter.
Oh, our dongle?
HDMI to USB-C. Thanks.
I'm sure you're aware there's a laser pointer up there for you.
By order of the speaker,
I'm going to pause it real quick. We'll have a chance to view the whole thing. Ammon, what was going on there?
So this is in the Lincoln Auditorium, and I'm sitting at the kind of the towards where the legislatures or whether they kind of have the different events, and these Idaho State Police just start coming in there in file row, and they pretty much end up lining the entire Lincoln Auditorium walls.
How many people, aside from the police, how many citizens were in that row?
I would say, 8 to 10 at this time.
What was their demeanor at the time?
Well, it was very surprising, actually. I mean, could not believe
Objection, you can't testify to someone else's, what they could or could not believe.
Okay, what was your demeanor at the time?
I'll strike the part of the answer about his thoughts about what their demeanor meant, other than surprising, because I think he has the ability to generally observe their demeanor himself. So I'm going to let that stand, that he observed them as demeanor as surprising.
Thank you. Hey, but I'm going to continue the video a little bit here.
You are requested to leave. If you do not leave, you will be arrested. Last warning. You will have, if you want to leave, now is the time to leave.
How many officers, well, you don't see the whole room at the same time, but how many officers did you see in the room that day?
I believe there was over 40.
And there were only, how many people you said were in the room? Civilians?
8 to 10, if I'm recalling right. There might not even be that many, but I think there's about 8 to 10.
What were you all doing that warranted almost 40 Idaho State Police to come in there?
We were just sitting there. We were just sitting, I mean, I was sitting there, I'd been there for a couple hours, and doing nothing. I mean, not just other than just sitting there and talking.
Did you feel like you'd broken any rule at that point?
No.
How do you know that?
Well, I can't talk about that. I've been restricted from talking about that.
Were you familiar with the rules on access to the Capitol building?
Yes, I was.
What was your understanding of those rules?
I understood that it was a public place, that there was certain rules and decorum of the people being in there, and that when it comes to the Lincoln Auditorium, that I had a right to be in there until 7 o'clock, and then that's when they closed the Capitol up. And I had looked that up before. I had researched that before because of what went on June 23rd. They wanted to make sure that the Lincoln Auditorium would be available for that. And so I had already knew previous to this day, basically what the rules were, what the Lincoln Auditorium was for, what the open hours of the Lincoln Auditorium were. And I understood that at that time.
Continue the video briefly.
So if you're not going to leave, then you will be arrested.
Is this approximately what your view was when you were sitting there in that chair?
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Can you count for me the amount of law enforcement just on that front part?
11.
Were there any on the sides of the room?
Yeah, they were behind me, and they went the entire outside wall of the Lincoln Auditorium.
Your Honor, I move to demonstrate to the witness what has been marked as Exhibit J. Mr. Bundy, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at a recent picture of my family picture, portrait.
You recognize it, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Was that a true photo of your family, an accurate photo?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit I.
Jay.
J.
I'm curious about the relevance of this exhibit.
Mr. Bundy's motivations for being there are very relevant to constitutional analysis.
Constitutional analysis is something that we've taken up with Your Honor and the law and not for the jury.
Still struggling to find the relevance of the family photo. Or was his family there at the time? Or were you using it for purposes of identification of individuals? Or simply
For purposes of motivation for what he's doing.
Schmidt, do you have any objection to defendant's J?
No, I don't.
I'll admit J. I don't. I'll let the jury decide how much evidentiary value it has, but I'll admit J. It's a good looking film.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I publish the photo using the OLO? Oh, can't do two things at once. I'll wait. I'm gonna publish.
I think you still need to tie in his motivation to the exhibit, though, if you want to use it for
Okay.
that purpose. So maybe ask the question.
All right, Mr. Bundy, I'm looking at a whole bunch of law enforcement from where you're sitting at that time, and I want to know why you didn't just stand up and leave.
Well, when I came there that day, I left my family, and I wasn't planning on being there that day, and I can't explain why. I'm not allowed to. But I left my family and I went to the Capitol building because I was concerned with several things that were happening, that I had seen that were happening there. And my entire motivation for anything that I had done even before this or that I was doing then was for my family and for my friends, for the state of Idaho, and for my country, because I had experienced many things that became very, very personal to me, many things that took me away from my family. And I saw in that time, I saw things that changed me. I mean, it completely changed me as a person. I mean, before that, I was a rancher son. I was basically run a fleet maintenance shop. I was pretty successful as far as, I built some software that was actually really successful as well. I was pretty much a normal guy. And then I had some terrible things that happened to me because I decided to stand for my father and for some other people in the ranching community. And anyway, I'm trying to respect the court's rules and still try to explain my motives. But it was a very, very difficult time for me and my family. And sorry, I'm not usually like this, but listen. But it changed me. It just changed me. And made all of this way more important. I mean, before I'd never been to a state capitol building. I'd never participated in a legislative process. I'd never stood for people's rights, really. I mean, I felt I knew them. I voted. Felt like that was really important. But after that experience, and finally when I was able to come home to my family, and all of that was exposed, and the truth finally came out, this stuff became absolute crucial, that we make sure that government fulfills the true purpose in which it was designed, that it doesn't begin to overreach, or it doesn't begin to use the organization and the power and the force it has to hurt people. And so, and that debate by design is supposed to happen in the Capitol building. And so that's why I was there. That's why I want to be able to pass the good things that I've had in my life onto my family. I got my oldest is 18. My youngest is 6 years old. I got 3 boys, 3 girls. My wife is a beautiful, wonderful person. Probably more loyal than I deserve. And
Objection or a non-responsive point to the question.
I'll ask that you have the witness answer a different question. I'm going to allow his testimony to stand.
Ammon, was this some kind of stunt?
no, not at all. Absolutely not.
Had you even planned to go to the Capitol that day?
No, I didn't want to go. I had a ton of other things. But I was concerned what I saw the day before. I was concerned about what might happen that day. And exactly what I was concerned about did happen. And that's why I felt like it was so important that I at least make some type of stand. Peaceful, yes. Within my rights, yes. Within the rules of the Capitol building, yes. But it was crucial that I make some type of stand and express that what was going on there, which really hasn't been fleshed out here, but what was really going on there had some type of accountability, at least a little bit.
I'm going to go back to the video real quick. There's a decision made somewhere here. I believe Sergeant Higley, who's on the left. Will you point him out for us? I believe he just asked you to leave. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you say that about this time you made a decision?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had to make a decision, obviously.
Originally, had you planned to leave at closing hours?
So I had even verbalized it that I was going to, that I knew that the Capitol or the Lincoln Auditorium closed at 7 and that I would leave sometime around that time or and I said this, if my wife calls me and tells me to get home.
Did you want to be away from your family that day?
No, not at all.
So I think that this is about the exact moment where you made a decision. And you believe you hadn't broken the law or any rules at that time, but you made a decision. Is that correct?
Yes, I made a decision. Absolutely.
Do you regret your decision?
No, not at all.
If we went back in time to August 25th, 2020, you're sitting right there at this time, would you have done the same thing?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it had to be done. It had to be done. And my experience and what I've gone through give me the strength to do it. And I wasn't afraid to do it. And I knew it needed to be done. And it was peaceful. And it brought it to a point. Right here, right now, it's bringing it to a point. People are understanding more now because of these proceedings. Excuse me.
Would you say that from your perspective, right there, when you're looking at law enforcement, would you say that the rights of people to be in public spaces without breaking the rules was what you're standing up for?
Objection leading.
Overruled. I'll allow to answer the question.
Could you restate the question?
I'll do it again. Ammon, looking at this photo right now, or video, and putting yourself in the shoes of August 25th, 2020, did you believe that you were standing up for the rights of every citizen to be in public spaces?
I don't know if that's what I was thinking. I was definitely thinking that what was happening here was inappropriate. The show of force was immense. It was unbelievable. And it was, in my opinion, designed to chill the people from being at the Capitol building, to put the people in order, to make sure that the people knew who was in charge. And that was what was going through my mind. And at that point, I had to make a decision. Was I just going to get up and leave and just let all of this get swept under the rug? Or was this important enough to say, no, this is not appropriate? We hadn't done anything wrong. We were there for the right reasons. The people were there for the right reasons. They had been peaceful. There was some time that they were loud, even disorderly. And there was also a lot of people that had never been to the Capitol building before. They didn't know what the decorum was, and they were learning that. That this was inappropriate.
Were there women and children in that room?
Yes.
I'm going to continue the video.
Be advised, Article 1, Section 18 of the Idaho Constitution, justice to be free.
If you're gonna leave, you better get out. You better leave. You're not gonna-
Please take your bag.
Then this is our-
What?
You left the bag.
I left a what?
You left.
Oh, I thought it
Please
was
take
me.
it. Thank you. Sorry.
Is everyone out there? Yeah. Everybody can trespass. You out here? Okay. Sure, you guys are
There's
here.
people in here.
What had you been told at that point by law enforcement?
I was told that I was going to be arrested, I believe. I don't think that was exact wordage, but I understood that I was going to be arrested.
Arrested for what?
I guess trespassing.
You believe you can be guilty of trespassing in a public building?
Yeah, I think that's possibly to be arrested for trespassing in a public building.
You think you could be guilty of trespassing in a public building?
I think under certain circumstances, yes.
Were any of those circumstances relevant to your situation then?
No,
You believe you were trespassing?
no, not at all.
I'm going to continue the video.
But you're gonna let the press people.
You with the camera. Let's go.
Let's go.
You can trespass out? The press needs to leave too then. Should I stay? Huh? Where's my phone?
Out right now.
Make sure you keep the camera.
Out right now, all the way.
Ammon.
All the way.
All right, we just heard a guy shout what seems like near the top of his lungs, correct?
Correct, sorry.
Is that obnoxious?
Yeah.
Would you have done anything like that?
No, it's not my style, I guess. No, I wouldn't.
Did you feel like he was probably breaking the rules of decorum in that situation?
Objection, relevance?
Overall, I think it has to do with his state of mind at the time of the events. I'll allow him to testify as to his belief whether the rules are decorum.
No, I mean, there was no committee hearing going on. I don't think he was. It was certainly obnoxious. It was certainly loud. It was kind of disrupting in the sense of everything, but I mean, I don't think he was breaking any rules at that time. Certainly not decorum.
As we continue watching the video, I want you to pay attention to the guy yelling, and I want you to compare it to what you were doing at the time.
Higher! Seek higher! Seek higher! Seek higher! Seek higher! Seek higher! Okay, this time.
Ammon, in your opinion, why did they arrest Ammon Bundy and not the dude in the hall yelling at the top of his lungs?
Objection, speculation?
Sustain on that. Asking this witness to speculate as to the motivation of the police to arrest him. He has that would be speculative. So
I'm going to continue the video.
You gotta close the doors. We are closing the doors.
Do not touch me. Do not touch me.
What time is it? Why are you doing this?
We're allowed to take, he's getting arrested.
Like, what time is it?
Are you gonna arrest me? Hey, no, you cannot touch. You can.
Mr. Bundy, what do you see?
Objection, Your Honor. This is getting into irrelevant and also has been a subject of the court's pretrial ruling.
approach. I have an issue. I need to take them outside your presence, so I'll have you excused. Please don't form any opinion about the merits of the case or discuss the matter.
All right.
Please be seated.
Your Honor, may I respond to the state's objection?
I want her to restate her objection for the record since the jury's down.
Yeah, the objection is that this exhibit right now, we're already past the point, but that it is showing the arrest of Joe Watts. And I believe that the court's been explicit that we're not talking about the third person that was arrested that day based on hearings prior to this, as well as the court's rulings throughout this trial.
You're talking about the
This is not,
motion in limine?
yes.
Response, Mr. Trish.
Your Honor, the arrest of Jill Watts has already been testified to many, many times in this trial already. It's highly relevant to whether Mr. Bundy, in fact, delayed the booking procedure, because as we heard testimony on, she was booked with the other defendants and was taken to the jail with the other defendants. So the arrest of Jill Watts has already been testified to, and it's relevant to a delay charge.
Mr. Schmidt, the objection or other offer?
I just like to state saying is that I recall that she's been brought up, and it also affects my state of mind at that time. You know, with the events that are occurring as far as the safety of others.
I'm going to overrule the objection, allow the video to be played to its end, and allow Mr. Bundy to describe what he sees. But I think it's important that it's clarified whether he could see this going on at the time, because he's in a different part of a room, quite a few feet away. And so if he's just saying, yeah, it looks like somebody's getting arrested, that's one thing. But if he's saying, I saw this and it had some effect on me, that's another. So I don't know if he has that ability, because he was being arrested at the time himself. So I'm not sure if it had an effect on his state of mind or if he's just describing what the video shows. I'm going to allow it for those purposes. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Clear? Bring the jury back.
One moment, Your Honor.
Certainly have a seat, you guys. If you want to, you already.
I'd like to inquire as to whether he did or not see it or not, because if he didn't see it, I'm concerned about the foundation that was laid. This is a true and accurate depiction of what happened, how we can have all those things.
May I respond, Your Honor? The state's witness testified that it was a true and accurate copy, and they didn't see step out the hall.
Or past, or past that point. This is not a. And
I've already ruled on the matter. Mr. Bundy can describe what the video shows, and then he can be asked questions whether he saw it in real time.
Just for the record, my video, if we are talking about my video, I cut it off before it would be a point that my witness who's laying foundation for it couldn't have possibly.
Well, we also heard a lot of discussion and testimony about what the tone of the room was, so it might be relevant for that too. I don't know.
This occurred, my recollection is all of the evidence regarding the tone of the room was related to after Misty and Brian Bowermaster were removed. Not
Still relevant to the extent of delay, since we've gotten into the timing of arrest, timing of transport, timing of booking. So I think it still has relevance to that there were other events going on at the time of Mr. Bundy's arrest outside of his control may have caused a delay in the case. I think it's also relevant.
271, go ahead. Bring it back here.
Your Honor, a couple more minutes. Some of the jurors are using the restroom.
All rise. Your Honor, the jury's present and accounted for.
Thank you, please be seated. State versus Schmidt, the jury is present and accounted for. Parties are present, counsel is present. I would just remind you still under oath. You may proceed, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You cannot touch her. Oh, my word.
What do you see in that video?
I see a officer grab a woman and drag her into the Lincoln Auditorium and grabbed her by the back of the neck and basically began to push her into the room.
At this point, are you in the same room, to be clear? This is also the Lincoln Auditorium.
Correct. This is the entry doors into the Lincoln Auditorium from the hallway.
Was she in the Lincoln Auditorium when she was arrested, or she brought there?
She
Judge,
was,
the exhibit speaks for itself. I don't think we need Mr. Bundy to explain to the jury what is in this video.
I'll sustain the objection. On that grounds. Now is
To your knowledge, Ammon, was that woman arrested?
yes, she was arrested.
Did you see her at all after that?
Yeah, in fact, I saw her right pretty much this moment. I saw when the officer put his hand on her neck and began to push her, and he moves her to this side, and then about right here, because they're now they're either getting me on the chair or and I can walk, and then they take her and throw her over he throws her over his shoulder and begins to walk down, and she's crying because it seemed like she was hurt.
Objection relevance?
I'm going to strike the portion of the testimony. It seems like she was heard, struck the jury to disregard, allow the testimony up to that point to stand. So I'll grant the objection in part.
I'm going to rewind the video quite a bit now. Let's make sure I get to the right spot. I looked at this scenario a little earlier, Ammon, and I asked if you regretted it, right?
Correct.
You heard about why you did it, but now I want to know why you didn't, why you don't regret it.
Well, I look at like how precious liberty is, and also how wonderful it is to live in this country and to live in this state. And I know for certain that there's a heavy price that is paid for the blessings and benefits that we have of living here. And that price shouldn't just be paid by those in the military. It shouldn't just be paid by the officers within the government. It has to be partially paid by the citizens. And in this case, it was important that the people stand and say this is not right, and check and balance that, and hopefully get it straightened out so it doesn't perpetuate, so it doesn't become worse and worse, to stop it now. And that's why I will never regret doing that. I was peaceful, I was well within my rights, and I would do it again under the same circumstances. Absolutely.
Is it safe to say you were doing more than just sitting in a chair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was sitting in the chair when earlier on in the committee hearing, I was peacefully sitting in the chair just observing. When I got up and walked down and sat in the other chair, I was no longer doing the same thing I was doing earlier. At that point, I was demonstrating that I was not happy with what was happening. I was making a point intentionally.
I move to publish Exhibit J on the Elmo, please.
Okay. You're going to remove that exhibit.
Sitting here today, Ammon, are you happy to be away from these people ever?
No, I mean, they left on family vacation this morning. I'm here, but they know why I'm here. My wife and children support me. Hope to catch up with them when it's done. And you know, they've suffered because of my decisions. They've suffered quite a bit because of my decisions. But as far as I know, each one of them, in their capacity to understand, feel that it was important and right to do as well. And I'm grateful that I have the support I have with my family and the many friends and associates that I have that I'm grateful for.
Ammon, do you have anything else you want to tell us?
Objection.
Sustained.
I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions of the witness?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
How did you get to know me?
Well, I did not know you. I guess I'd met you one time before.
Objection, relevance of this line of question?
I'm not sure, but I'm going to let him attempt to tie it in, so I'm going to reserve on your objection.
So I'd met you one time before, but really didn't know you or your name or really anything until this incident. And so, you know, when we were in the hallway, when we went up the elevator together, when we were arrested, you know, that was really the first time I had much interaction with you.
Did you see me in the Lincoln Auditorium during that day?
I saw the first time I could recall, I think you were arrested and they were moving you toward the back of the room.
Did you ever see me sitting down in the Lincoln Auditorium?
No.
Did you ever see me in there while you were peacefully sitting at the location in that room?
No, I never saw you during that time.
Thank you. Ross?
Just have a moment, please.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bundy.
Good afternoon, Ms. Welsh.
I'm going to ask you some questions. So let me know if anything's not clear. And I'm going to ask that you answer only the question that I ask, okay?
If I can answer that way, I will.
And you have lawyers, we're going to give you another shot at this, okay? You understand that?
I do.
Object to that question. Let me ask the questions. Over.
The Idaho legislature had a special session in August of 2020, correct?
Correct.
And our governor called that special session.
Yes.
The purpose of that special session was to address the effects of COVID on our state, correct?
That is not how I understood it.
The governor called a special session in response to COVID, correct?
He called the special session to pass an immunity
Yes
bill.
or no?
No.
That's not correct.
Would you rephrase it and I'll try to answer it?
The special session that the governor called, was it instigated by the COVID pandemic?
No.
The COVID pandemic had nothing to do with the special session in August of 2020. Is that your testimony?
No, I'm not saying that was not what caused it all, if that's what you're talking about.
Is it fair to say that the trigger for the special session was the COVID pandemic? Let's try this.
I think we're just caught in semantics. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't probably believe what you believe about pandemic and so forth. And I know that might seem, it's just probably semantics, but I can't say yes to that because I wouldn't be honest if I said yes.
So you think that the governor of the state of Idaho called the special session for a reason unrelated to the COVID pandemic? Is that fair?
No, I would have to say no to that too. I'm sorry. Can I explain? Can I explain to get, because it's just a matter of semantics. So.
You may be able to explain on redirect.
Okay,
or unless she asks you to explain.
Okay, sorry.
So far we haven't been able to agree on the fact that, what if I called it the so-called COVID pandemic? Would that help?
That would probably help, yeah.
Okay. All right. Can you agree with me that the governor of the state of Idaho called the special session in response to the so-called pandemic, COVID pandemic?
For the sake of moving on, yes.
No, I don't want to do anything for the sake of moving on.
He was wanting immunity for his decisions that he was making because of the COVID scare or whatever you might call it. Because pandemic is there's a term. It's a term. I mean, it actually means there's a criteria. And I don't believe that Idaho met that criteria. So that's why I would say it. It's not being a conspiracy theorist or anything. It's just simply they didn't meet the criteria of calling it a pandemic. That's why I have a hard time saying yes to that. He was looking for immunity for his COVID lockdown decisions upon the people of Idaho.
But you still couldn't say yes even when I called it a so-called pandemic.
Yeah, I don't think that's kind of the other side, the other extreme. I mean, I believe there was a virus. I believe that it did kill people.
Okay, I'm not concerned about what you believe or not regarding the pandemic. If you don't personally believe in a law, will you comply with it?
If I personally don't believe in a law, can you explain, like maybe give me a scenario?
Masks?
As far like in Idaho?
Yes.
She confirmed she was talking about masks.
Masks were never made a law.
Well, if a public building made it a law to wear a mask prior to being able to enter, would you comply with that law?
No, I'm going to object to this question. This is not relevant.
Well, I think she's asking a hypothetical right now. So I'll allow her to ask that question in the hypothetical.
So there is a lawful process to make law. And that happens in the Capitol building. And that is through a legislature, the House, the Senate, and then it is signed by the governor. And until then, it is not a law.
Was the Idaho trespassing law, did that go through the lawful process that you just described? Idaho Code 187008? Yes or no?
Overruled.
Yes. As far as I'm understood, yes, absolutely.
If there is a policy or rule that you don't believe in, will you comply with it?
It depends.
What does it depend on?
The legitimacy of the policy, was it
Okay,
I'm
going to stop you there.
legislative?
Who decides the legitimacy?
The owner, are you talking about like in a building?
Sure.
The owner of the building.
But you said the legitimacy. Who makes the determination as to whether or not it's legitimate in you personally assessing whether or not you're going to comply?
The owner makes the legitimacy of it.
So if you don't agree with the rule or policy enacted by the owner, will you comply?
Your Honor, I'm going to object on the vagueness of the question.
So if I'm in, let's say I'm at somebody's house, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, sorry, Your Honor. I was just looking for a scenario to understand it better.
If a government agency requires you, or a government agency requires you to wear a mask, would you comply?
That's way too vague. Can you give me correct, like another scenario?
If the Idaho Supreme Court required that you wear a mask, would you comply?
Like where? Like
Into the courthouse?
no, I wouldn't comply.
And is the reason for the non-compliance because you don't believe in the rule itself?
No,
You don't believe in the authority behind the rule?
no, that has nothing to do with it.
You don't believe in the process that the rule went through to be promulgated?
No, that has nothing to do with it.
But you decide for yourself, based on these very strong personal convictions, with which rules you'll comply and which ones you won't, correct?
Every person does. That's what's called conscience. We all have to decide. That's extremely important that we do that. All of us decide.
And if your constitutional rights, from your perspective, are infringed on in any way, does that especially elevate your concern?
So I believe that the Constitution doesn't give me rights. It protects them.
So if you feel as though your constitutional rights are infringed, what kind of reaction does that produce in you?
Again, I don't believe that the Constitution gives me rights. I believe it protects them. My rights don't come from the Constitution. I believe my rights come from God. Just as the Declaration of Independence makes it very clear.
You went to the Idaho Capitol building in August of 2020, correct?
Correct.
You went there on August 24th.
I object, Your Honor.
She may restate the question of objection.
Did you attend the Idaho State Capitol on August 24th
Yes.
and also on August 25th, correct?
And the 26th, yes.
I know it's really hard because you have a lot of information that you want to get out, but please don't answer a question that I don't ask. Agree?
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I will also admonish the witness to try to limit your responses to the question only. Just a reminder.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
And you went there to exercise your right as an Idaho citizen, correct?
Yeah.
Take part in the process, right?
Correct. Are we talking about the 25th or the 24th?
25th.
25th, okay.
And is it fair to say that there were issues with which you were concerned being addressed at the special session?
On the 24th?
25th.
Oh, excuse me, 25th, okay. And so was there issues? Are you with the proceedings or the people? Yes, there was issues that I saw that concerned me.
And you wanted to go and hear what was being said, correct?
Yeah, there was a hearing going
No?
on. Yes.
You wanted to go make your voice heard during the special session?
Not on the 25th.
On the 24th, did you want to have your voice heard?
Yeah,
Yes or no?
yes. That wasn't my intent. That was not the reason why I went, no, but to participate, yes.
And you actually provided testimony on August 24th, correct?
Correct.
At the Capitol,
Correct.
in the Lincoln Auditorium.
Correct.
And House Member Greg Cheney was the chairman.
Yes.
You addressed the entire committee.
I think they were all there, yes, in attendance, as far as I know.
Did you have to follow a sign-in sheet to do that? Did you have to write your name down on a piece of paper?
I don't recall because there was some
That's fine,
people
you don't
writing
recall.
it down.
Did you have to wait for your turn to speak?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to further question about derelict dates.
We offer relevance, is what he understands procedure of testimony in a hearing.
Yes, and that he was able to have his voice heard on the 24th.
I don't think he was testifying during the relevant portion of this, the events on the 25th, August 9th.
You don't think that what? I'm sorry.
He wasn't testifying at the time of the relevant events in this case.
No, but certainly his direct testimony was large regarding his ability to be heard and how important these things are to him.
I don't know how that impacts the events the 25th. Can you clarify?
That there is a way for him to have his voice heard, and he was able to do it without getting arrested on the 24th.
Objection overruled for that purpose.
So prior to testifying, did you have to wait for other people to testify?
Yeah, I wasn't the first one.
And whether you wrote it or not, did your name appear on some kind of sign-up sheet to testify?
I don't know for sure. I assume that's what happened.
Did anyone try and stop you from testifying?
I'm going to object, Your Honor.
Overruled.
No, I mean,
Yes or no?
no.
Physically?
Physically what?
Did anyone try and physically stop you from testifying on August 24th?
I'm going to object, Your Honor. May I approach?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have an issue I need to take up outside your presence. Please don't discuss the case with anyone, including yourselves. Please don't form any opinion as to its merits.
All right.
Please be seated. We weren't getting into the events of the 24th, and I thought I told you that you could ask one question about it, and you asked 8 or 10 of them as well. Why?
I didn't understand that the court said I could ask one question about it. As far as the state's intent on asking about the 24th, right now, it is limited to the testimony that he provided in front of the Lincoln Auditorium. I was not intending, of course, without asking the court's permission, to go into the violent events of August 24th. Just the fact that he testified because he followed proper procedure and that his voice was heard. I think that's an appropriate response to Mr. Bundy's in-depth description of why he felt like he had to do what he did in order to make his voice heard or a political statement or whatever, and trying to make the point that there's another way for him to do that, and he did and is able to do that when he follows the proper procedure. I in no way intended to get into the violent events of August 24th in this line of questioning. If we want to talk about that, I understand, and I was planning to follow the court's order that we would talk about it in this form, and then the court would decide independently. But
well, if you're going to get into whether he had another method in which to voice his concerns and opinions, then it does open the door for defense to come in and ask whether he felt on that day his voice and concerns were heard. And if he completely had the opportunity to voice those concerns and have his voice heard. So it does open the door. What I'm not going to allow is the reference to the violent events of the 24th. That's not coming in yet, but depending on how stuff goes, it may.
And just to be clear, the violent events occurred that morning. The hearing and the testimony was in the afternoon.
Your Honor, I'd like a response.
You'll get a response. Just don't interrupt. Go ahead.
And
I'll let everybody talk.
yeah, that is where the state was starting, is the afternoon of the 24th, and no attempt to elicit. Now, maybe this particular question, I said, did anyone physically try and stop you from testifying? Mr. Bishop indicates that he's going to say yes. And I guess trying to warn that if I ask this question, then that's going to open the door. I don't see that connection.
Right,
But I appreciate the heads up about what he's going to say.
You physically stopped from testifying on the 24th?
Earlier that day I was.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is she talking about the afternoon committee?
I believe she's talking about the afternoon committee, and
Right. And on that event, when you testified, were you physically prevented from testifying?
no.
Bishop, you can state your objection.
Your Honor, I object to the further questioning down this line. We've gone really far out of our way to avoid talking about the 24th. And the state has referenced Mr. Bundy's lengthy motivation for doing it, and that it was motivated by the 24th. We stayed way far away from the 24th in talking about that. We were very careful about that. In addition, separate from all the other issues of bringing up this video, we've got a question that is really misleading to the jury. Did anybody stop you on the 24th, or even if we say on the 24th, the afternoon of the 24th, did anybody stop you physically from giving your testimony? And no, of course, I answer honestly, no. Well, that's really misleading, because on that same day, someone did physically stop him from giving his testimony. That's really misleading to the jury. We've gone really far out of our way to stay away from the 24th, and we ask that the state honor that commitment.
Here's what I'm going to do. You can ask him what you want about testifying on the 24th, and you can redirect on whether he was, in fact, at one point earlier in the day, stopped from testifying on the 24th. If you guys go further than any of that, you're going to have to ask permission outside the presence of the jury. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor, may I comment on that? Or
Sure.
if he asks Mr. Bundy if he was blocked from testifying earlier in the day, I just want to be clear that the violent events were not in preparation for any kind of a testimony whatsoever.
Well, the relevance is whether he attempted to testify in front of the committee earlier on the 24th and was physically prevented from doing that. And if that was, in fact, was the case, it's relevant inquiry on redirect.
Oh, I agree, but
Okay.
that did not happen.
Okay? So how was he physically prevented from testifying in the morning of the 24th?
Yeah.
How was he physically?
Yes.
My understanding is that there was a hearing, and he had intended to go testify at the hearing, and the hearing room was closed to the excess of people. And his intention was to go testify, and there's a physical, I think the court's seen the video, I don't know. There was a physical, he was physically prevented by law enforcement from entering into that hearing. So he was prevented. And I do have another question. If he does answer yes, then the video's in automatically?
Yes to what question?
Yes to the question of whether he was physically prevented from testifying on the 24th.
What video?
The video that's the subject of this court's motion in limine.
testify. I'm sorry.
I believe it's provisional.
I've only dealt with about 10 videos in this case.
I apologize, Your Honor. I can be more specific.
And I'm starting to lose my patience here, and I'm about ready to break for the day. So give me your best shot, both of you. I'm going to make a decision, and we're going to move on. And I'll let you talk to Mr. Schmidt, okay? But we're going to get this evidence and this witness on the stand. And so if you guys want to keep barking at me about all these sub areas, I'll deal with it, and you may not like the results. State what you want me to do with regard to what particular video you have in mind.
Paragraph 3 of this, what I believe is paragraph 3 of this court's motion to eliminate prevents the introduction of a video of offense on the 24th.
It doesn't. It says scope of questions at trial that I'm reserving ruling for each witness on direct.
I can give you a better cite. I thought it was paragraph 3. But there was 3 things governing in that.
Events occurring before or after August 25. Such matters are not relevant. Generally, such matters are not relevant to charges against the defendants in these cases. State's motion is granted in this regard unless the determination is made outside the presence of the jury. The proper testimony or evidence is relevant.
That's the wrong paragraph. That's the wrong paragraph. It's a different paragraph. I'm sorry, but
video events of 24th.
Thank you.
Pursuant to the prosecutor's representation, the hearing, the defendant's motion is granted. Parties are barred from any use, mention, or reference of this video at trial. This matter is raised to rule upon by the court outside the presence. So that's what we're doing now. But the video that you want to introduce in response to the state's questioning is of what?
I don't want to introduce any video. I want to abide by by the order and eliminate. I don't want to introduce any video, but I don't want to get into questioning that will will allow the state to introduce the video.
Here's the court's ruling. I'm going to allow Mr. Bundy's testimony with regard to his ability to testify in an afternoon hearing on the 24th to stand. We're not going into any more questions about it. You can limit your redirect on that issue and that issue alone. That'll be the court's ruling. I'm going to grant the objection in part, deny it in part on that basis. Bring the jury back in. Mr. Schmidt, I'm sorry, hold on. Did you want to be heard? I keep leaving you out of the conversation.
Just really shortly,
I apologize.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say just really shortly, I feel that I'd be running in the same direction with Ammon as far as that, because I was there to get testimony too. And so I don't want to run down that road either, because that was what happened with me, where I was signed up to give testimony.
You haven't testified yet.
I would say I don't want to run down that road, because I know we're running right along there, and I don't want to go through this.
Do you understand the court's ruling with regard to the limitations on Mr. Bundy's testimony relative to the events of 24 August of last year?
I have not, since I just got that, I have not looked at that point.
I just read my ruling in court, though. I want to know if you understand what my limitations are.
I will go ahead.
You know, do I need to explain them to you more?
I don't want to waste some time.
You're not wasting my time. You're entitled to a clear explanation as to my ruling. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that'd be wonderful.
So I'm going to allow what he's testified to this point to stand. All right, but we're not going to get into the events of the morning, August 24, and we're not going to ask questions any further about his testimony in front of the committee on the 24th, and he was able to effectuate that. Okay, we're done with that.
And Your Honor, for the record, the state has never attempted to elicit testimony regarding the morning of August 24th.
Noted. Bring the jury in, please.
All right.
Your Honor, the jury's present and accounted for.
Thank you. Please be seated. On the record, State versus Bundy, State versus Schmidt. Jury's present, accounted for. Attorneys are present. Parties are present. Bundy, still remind you, still under oath. Yes. We continue.
And Your Honor, I just asked a question and Mr. Bundy did not answer it. Is that?
Let's look at, let me go back to the relevant portion.
I can withdraw that last question and ask one more question about that and move on. If he didn't answer.
Last question is withdrawn, and you may ask, make further inquiry.
Mr. Bundy, were you able to successfully present testimony to the House of Representatives on August 24th, 2020?
That day I was.
Let's talk about March 25th, the Lincoln Auditorium. Did you attend a public hearing that afternoon?
Object, Your Honor. On specificity of the question, March 25th, why?
I'll sustain for clarification of the year. Said March 25th.
August 25th,
Okay.
2020. Thank you, Ms. Hazel. Did you attend a public hearing that afternoon?
It actually started in the morning and then went to the afternoon, yes.
So you attended a public hearing the afternoon of August 25th, 2020
Yes,
in the Lincoln Auditorium.
correct.
And did Chairman Cheney preside over that hearing?
Yes,
And was that a continuation of the same hearing that you had testified at the day before?
yes, it was a continuation.
Do you know a woman named Misty Gardner or Misty Carfeld?
Yes,
We saw her testify, correct?
correct.
And where was she sitting when that hearing began?
I actually, when it first began, I didn't even realize I didn't realize where she was sitting. It wasn't until later I understood.
Do you know Brian Bauermaster?
Yes,
Do you know, yes or no, where he was sitting when that hearing first began?
no,
Did Idaho State Police remove Brian Bauermaster from that seat? Yes or no?
well, I said I didn't know where he was sitting.
Did you see Idaho State Police remove Brian Bauermaster from the Lincoln Auditorium?
Yes, I did.
But what you're arguing with me about now is you don't know where he was seated, correct?
Well, you asked me where he was seated at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't recall where he was sitting at the beginning of the meeting.
At some point, was Brian Bauermaster seated in the press-only area of the Lincoln Auditorium? Are you aware of whether he was or not?
At some point, yes.
And when he was seated in that press-only seat, did the Idaho State Police come and remove him?
Yeah, yes.
And right after that happened, did you go sit in the same seat in which Mr. Bauermaster had been sitting?
There was a
Yes or
little,
no?
there was a little bit of the time. And then, yes, I went and sat in that area.
How much time?
Um,
Less than 2 minutes?
I would say less than 5 minutes.
And the seat you chose to sit in was marked for press only, correct?
Yes, even though I didn't
Yes or
know it
no?
at that time.
Well, we're only interested in what you knew at that time. Is it your testimony that you didn't know that that seat you chose to sit in was marked for press only?
Correct. When I first stood up, I did not know it was marked for press only. I understood what was going on in the room, but I did not know it was marked for press only.
When did you realize it was marked for press only?
When I went down and sat down,
Okay. So when you chose to sit down, at the moment you sat down, you saw the sign that's been introduced as an exhibit, correct? Yes or no?
or one like it. I'd rather say,
Well, it was your exhibit. So
yeah, you don't want me to say no. That doesn't help you, right? I mean, I'm just saying one like it. One like it. It looked like it.
I think the witnesses testified that he sat down and saw a sign similar to the exhibit.
Correct.
Hear my objection. Go ahead. State representative that it was his exhibit. That is incorrect.
I think we are talking about the exhibit that showed the press-only sign.
But not Mr. Bundy's.
Right. So no, thank you.
And when you moved to that seat, was it generally thought that the hearing would reconvene in that same room?
I don't believe so. It was put at ease. Several of the legislatures had left the room. I think the chairman had left the room. I may be wrong about that. I think he had already left the room though, and it didn't appear that there was ever going to be that meeting was ever going to be convened. But I mean, there's a possibility, but I'm pretty sure Chairman Cheney had already left the room.
And is that due to the volatility in that room?
I can't speak for him.
Well, you said you're pretty sure that it wasn't going to reconvene in that room, correct?
Yeah, it was pretty disruptive. There was a lot of disorder. People were very upset.
So it was volatile. Yes or no?
I think according to the definition, yeah, I think, people were upset. Idaho State Police were in there. There had some several things that had gone on that people were concerned about.
I think you answered the question.
Thank you.
Said yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one tried to kick you out of that press-only seat, did they? Yes or no?
When?
Fair enough. At that moment, after you chose to sit in Brian Bauer Master's seat, no one approached you at that time, did they?
No.
And at that time, your motivation was in order to, quote, show the absurdity of the actions on behalf of the Idaho State Police and Chairman Greg Cheney, unquote.
I think that's pretty accurate.
And you intended to remain there for as long as it took Idaho State Police to confront you? Yes or no?
No.
That's not what you stated on the YouTube video? Yes or no?
That's not what I intended.
But that hearing didn't continue in the Lincoln Auditorium.
No, it did not. They moved to another room.
You didn't go to the new room, did you? Yes or no?
No, I did not. I didn't even know they convened in another room.
Others left Lincoln Auditorium, correct?
Yes.
The others followed the process to where it had moved to, correct? Yes or no?
The way I understood it, that they were not allowing people into that room.
Is that a correct understanding?
Your Honor, I object.
Rule. He's testified as what his understanding was.
So I've seen pictures of that where there's 12.
I don't want to hear about pictures of that. I want to know if, as you sit here right now, that was a correct understanding that you were not allowed in the new room.
I do not know whether people were allowed or not at this point.
Some other people remained in the Lincoln Auditorium with you, right?
Yes.
Do you know why, yes or no, why they stayed with you?
I have no idea.
Was the hearing being streamed into the Lincoln Auditorium?
Not that I know of.
So were you participating in a committee meeting when you were arrested?
No.
Was the legislative process going on at all when you were arrested?
I don't know if it was or not.
In the Lincoln Auditorium?
In the Lincoln Auditorium, as far as I know, no.
You were still in the Lincoln Auditorium when the hearing concluded, correct?
Yes. I officially, I'm not sure when it ended, but I mean, we have good record of that. But yes, I never left the Lincoln Auditorium
So you
after the
acknowledge
hearing.
you acknowledge now that that hearing did in fact move to a different location, correct?
Yeah.
And at some point, Sergeant Blake Higley entered the room, correct?
Correct.
You knew him to be a law enforcement officer,
I did.
and there were many other troopers, correct?
Many others.
And they're all in uniform.
Correct.
Sergeant Higley was the only one not in uniform, correct?
I'm not sure about that.
Sergeant Higley ordered everyone in the room to immediately depart. Yes or no?
I don't think he used those terms.
Did Sergeant Higley give an order on behalf of the Speaker of the House?
Yes, that would be an accurate statement.
Did he tell you to immediately depart or face arrest? Yes or no?
That is not the terms he said.
What did he say?
I think he said the first time he came in, he says, by order of the Speaker, the room is to be cleared or something like that. Anyway, I don't exactly recall the exact term, but.
Would it have mattered to you what exact terms he used in making your decision to stay or go?
Yeah, it would have mattered.
What could he have told you to have you obey the order and leave?
About the order, or like who would have he said?
Regarding the order, I'm not talking about like a bomb threat or anything like that, but how could Sergeant Higley effectively communicated to you in a way that made you understand that you were subject to this law, that you needed to leave the Lincoln Auditorium at that moment?
What law are you talking about?
Idaho Code 187008.
Well, my understanding at the time was I had a right to be there.
So is it fair to say that there's no particular language that would have triggered you to comply with this law?
Are you talking about 187008, the trespassing law?
Yes.
I don't think that's an accurate assessment of what my state of mind was.
I'm not saying what your state of mind was. I'm trying to understand for the jury, if the reason you didn't leave was something about the way Sergeant Higley said it, is that what made you not comply?
No, I believed I had a right to be there. I believe I had a right, and I still would have a right to be there.
Okay, so there is nothing Sergeant Higley could have communicated to you that would have made you leave the Lincoln Auditorium that day, correct?
Yes, there is something.
No, it's not. It hasn't been answered. Overruled. It's been asked, but it hasn't been answered. So I'm gonna see if we can get an answer.
Yes, there is something. There's probably many things.
Regarding 187008.
So I really didn't understand that statute
Okay.
in its like textual verbiage until I was charged with those charges. So I don't see how I could honestly answer that question.
Okay. Do you believe that not understanding the law is a defense to the law?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay. What would Sergeant Higley have had to tell you to get you to comply with Sergeant Bedke's order in that moment?
I don't know that there's, when it comes to Bedke's orders, when to answer it how you want, and honestly, I don't know that there would have been anything. I felt clearly that I had a right to be there.
So this isn't a matter of you not being able to hear Sergeant Higley, right?
Oh no, I could hear him.
It's not a matter of not being able to understand him.
No,
You're not
Not better.
confused about what he wants you to do,
no, not at all.
but you didn't immediately depart when he instructed you to, did you?
No, I did not.
And you still didn't depart when Lieutenant Ketchum spoke with you and gave you further chances to immediately depart, did you?
No,
And you did it because you believed that you had a right to be there.
I know I had a right to be there. I'm very confident in that.
You think that's for the jury to decide?
Yeah, I actually do. I think
You
that's,
believe, and you still do, that there's no such thing as the Speaker of the House's authority to order a room to be cleared by Idaho Capitol, correct?
no, that's not correct.
Absent some type of safety situation, do you believe that Speaker Bedke has authority to order people to depart from a room where there's no legislative business going on?
If I understand rule, I think it's 64, House Rule 64, it gives Bedke authority to clear the gallery and the lobbies. He certainly has that authority. I think I think the condition on that is if someone is being disorderly, and he certainly has a right to do that. If they're disorderly in the lobby or gallery, he has a right to do that.
Do you believe that Speaker Bedke has the authority to order the Lincoln Auditorium cleared at the close of business when there's no legislation going on? Yes or no?
Are you talking about after business hours
I
or
just said
before?
after legislative business is concluded for the day, just after it's over.
Depends on what room.
The Lincoln Auditorium.
The Lincoln Auditorium is a joint room,
Yes or no?
so no.
Okay. So you don't believe that Speaker Bedke, the House of Representatives, had the authority to do what he did to you and Aaron Bunchmit and everybody else in that room on August 25th, 2020, correct?
I believe that we
Yes or
had a
no?
right to be there.
Okay, I understand that. Do you believe in House Speaker Bedke's authority to order you and everybody else in that room to depart when there's no business going on?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
I'm not sure I've heard a definitive answer, so I'll rule, but I'll let her ask the question one more time. She's asking if you believe he had the authority to order people out of the room under those circumstances.
So at that time, at 5 o'clock,
When there's no legislative business going on, let's not get caught up on 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever. If there's no legislative business going on in the Lincoln Auditorium, do you think that House Speaker Bedke has the authority to have that room cleared?
under those circumstances, at 5 o'clock in that room, no,
4 o'clock,
no.
3 o'clock?
Are you talking about on that day when there was a committee hearing?
No, I think we've established there's no committee hearing going on in the Lincoln Auditorium at that time, correct?
Correct.
So yeah, at 3 o'clock, if he had wanted the room cleared, do you believe that Speaker Bedke had the authority to do that?
Would you rephrase that so I understand it?
Hypothetically, 3 p.m., Lincoln Auditorium on August 25th. There was no legislative business being conducted, correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that at that time, House Speaker Bedke had the authority to order the room cleared and closed?
I believe that my right to be in there is protected.
So no.
And so no.
So no. Okay.
As long as I'm being peaceful and non-disruptive and not damaging anything.
So we're here because you don't agree with House Speaker Bedke's authority in this regard, correct?
In what regard?
In regard of his ability to have control over the Lincoln Auditorium and have his orders carried out in that particular room when there's no legislative business going on.
Within business hours or open hours?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
that's why we're all here.
I'm not the one that charged myself, so you can tell us. I'd rather be home with my family.
Mr. Bundy, what's your relationship to a group called the People's Rights Network?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to
Rose.
this question on relevance.
John, we're going to take our break for the evening. Again, I'm going to admonish you not to discuss the case with anyone, including each other. I will ask you tomorrow if anyone's attempted to approach you and discuss the case with you. And also, please do not form or attempt to form any opinion as to the merits of the case. Try to start back up at 8:30 again tomorrow. Thank you for your attentiveness. Get some rest. Take care of yourselves. Court's in recess till tomorrow, 8:30 a.m.
All rise.